Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for the nice invitation, Stefano. And I want to discuss a bit informally, a bit more technically about this idea of decentralization, which I think is the real novel thing. I'm not presenting a work. We are working on these topics, many of them, so if you are interested, talk to me later on. I'm in Scotland, in Stirling for the moment. So I will discuss this idea basically at the start with the blockchain of Bitcoin in mind. This is a very good paper for anyone who is interested and wants to start understanding the topic. It's a complex idea which is very multidisciplinary, and we will see why. So basically the idea is, was in the original paper a currency without a bank. That sounds a bit like a football match without a referee. But is it really like this? So there is a matter of trust, and it is implemented by basically two things. The distributed consensus, proof of work in Bitcoin or other proposals, that allows us to agree on which are the transactions, and then some computational activity that proves for us that the transactions are correct. Okay, the system balances itself on these two elements and other things. So the computation is an arbiter. It's a completely new model. If you think a bit, I put this asterisk because what I'm saying now in this slide is not really true, but think what is a test in this model. Okay, suppose I steal a password or I crack a password, okay? My transaction is undistinguishable with the real transaction, with the transaction of the real owner of the money. There is no police. If I discover that something has been stolen, there's nobody to tell. So there's no backtrack. There are no, in principle, recovery strategy. We have seen that sometimes they were needed, and there has been a big fuss to decide what to do. There are no people, no identities. This is not true as well, but in general, the idea is that. So it's also difficult to find the culprit, if any. And we don't have good models for describing and understanding this system at the various levels. So about governance, the centralized trust. So it's a very complex system based on incentives. So there is a strong component of economics or crypto economics, as it has been called. So for instance, there are several examples, but this paper shows how if you can convince miners to do something else, a lottery, that drains computational power from the network, with a relatively small investment, you can do easily an attack with not 50%, not necessarily 50% of the computational power. So this is quite difficult. Which is the model? Do we assume that miners are rational agents that always maximize their revenue in terms of game theory ideas? Is there space for some stochasticity or probability or preferences? It's clearly socioeconomic. We will learn a lot from economical theory. Interesting is also the role played by the monetary policy. In Bitcoin, it's fixed, so 20 million, deflective behavior. But this money, these coins, are the one that keeps the system alive. So if this kind of a policy is not well designed forever, in principle, we will have problems. Needs to have a contact with the real money. For the moment, there's no economy behind cryptocurrency. So the value is what you are happy to pay for in typically US dollars. Okay, so which is the model? How these things can influence the models that we develop to describe this system. About governance, everything is nice, but when you see the application, this is the graph of who mines the blocks. You see, there are 4 entities that mines 50% of the block. So this is proportional to the computational power of each entity. So is this decentralized? if we want to have a model of security of these things, where do we place this kind of information? And how do we resolve the disputes? For instance, scalability has been mentioned earlier on several times. 5, 10 transactions on Bitcoin, Ethereum, so on and so forth, 2,000 per second by Visa. So recently, very recently, Michele was mentioning this earlier on, there has been a large dispute about what to do, whether to offload some of the transaction in secondary blockchains or to enlarge the block. This is a paper about this idea of offloading transaction on secondary blockchains. And this has been resolved by a big fight, a split of the community, the introduction of a new currency, Bitcoin Cash. Magically, if you had 1 Bitcoin, you also had 1 Bitcoin Cash. And this is, in a sense, real value. You can convert this in dollars. So magically, this step has absorbed twice the resources that were in the economy at that moment, simply because of a way of resolving a dispute. Where does this system start to show signs of problems? When you try to go on the boundary between virtual and real, which typically is when you convert money, at that point the decentralization is not so much decentralized, because there are a lot of very well centralized authorities like SEC, FCA in US, UK, that wants to see this money, of course, for instance, for taxes. So at that point, a few weeks ago, that there were rumors that South Korea government was shutting down exchanges. South Korea has a large market. And this caused large fluctuation in the blockchain price. And this generates more research. For instance, we have seen earlier on how to track people on the graph of the payment, but also development and application of new theories, zero knowledge for identity, for anonymity, implemented in coins like Monero, and so on and so forth. So this is about the models in general, the complexity of capturing all the relevant aspects. I want to show you 3 examples now, very briefly. One is this. This is BitHalo. It's connected with a coin that is called Bay, because they want to be the eBay of virtual currency. Basically, the idea is that 2 people that do not trust each other can get together, pay a deposit, do a transaction, and then when the transaction is safe, they get the deposit back. So there's no central authority. Everything is done by a program, and which is the correct model to describe this. So this is something we have actually studied and published a paper about this, and we try to match game theory with formal analysis. So game theory is for the part of the graph, the moves that are more convenient to the participants, and then this informs a state-based stochastic algorithm and model checking, and in the end you can prove things, you can study things like how big the deposit has to be, the ratio between the deposit and the value of the things, in order to minimize the probability of fraudulent behavior. We are not completely satisfied, because at the moment game theory and formal methods are not merged suitably, in my opinion. But this is another example that I think is very illuminating. In some countries, there is the possibility of signing a legally binding declaration that you don't want to be resuscitated if you end up in an emergency room in an hospital. And this is binding for the doctors. And this is has been described recently, 2017, in this paper. So the case was that someone arrived in an emergency room with this tattoo, and the doctors didn't know what to do. There was an ethical commission in charge of the asylum. Of course, you can imagine the time frame. And this is because this piece of information is not of correct quality. And this is a key passage. So imagine that instead of this, the doctors didn't know whether this was genuine, recent, up-to-date. Imagine you have a QR code that any doctor in any country basically can scan, go to the blockchain and have all the information about this kind of things. So maybe in 5 days ago, you signed that you are still willing to stay with this order, and maybe there is a picture, maybe there are other accessory information which is available everywhere, anytime, up to date. And importantly, this is a focus on Horizon 2020, for instance. The owner of the data is the patient. So it's the patient independently that can modify this data, update it, change it, and without asking to any central organization. Third example, something that is very difficult in cryptocurrency, lending. So how do you lend money in cryptocurrency? Two big problems are volatility, of course, because you don't know how much you will be repaying, and the risk that you don't get the money back because of everything we said so far. And it is interesting that the proposed solutions inch towards centralization. So a normal idea is to link the amount of money, instead of expressing the price in Bitcoin, you could express the price in US dollar, for instance. And then you return the equivalent in 2 months in Bitcoin of the price that has been agreed. And then you have the problem about who does provide the exact amount. So you need to, everything has to be done automatically on the blockchain. So there must be a feeder that tells the contract how much money you own. So whoever, whatever organization controls this feeder is a strong point of centralization. Okay, these were 3 examples where I think it's worth working and doing research. And then I want to give you 3 pointers to possible evolutions. So one is trying to constrain this decentralization, okay? So there are permission networks where you must be a member of the club, so clear identity. Double permission where also it is decided who can make decisions. One interesting approach is this one, Stellar. Maybe you have heard about this. So the idea is that every node decide who they want to trust. And there are kind of coalitions. And the property is called Quorum Intersections. All these coalitions have someone that connects them in the intersection. So there's no single coalition that is completely isolated. And the consensus propagates locally by these quorum intersections. So people start deciding, there is an algorithm to make correct decisions and so on and so forth. But the point is that there is always this connection with all the other coalitions. So the problem is that when you have a Byzantine nodes or fraudulent or failing nodes, this is broken. So the solution is, again, towards centralizations, in the sense that the organization, Stellar, wants to keep control on these nodes. So you can choose to trust whoever you want, but you have also to trust some people that are very important, that I'm going to tell you who they are, that allows this quorum intersection property to hold. So we are working on this. If you are interested, there is a lot of space for Ethereum. I would like to talk a lot about this because I think here what is missing is the comprehensive model of the interaction. If you try to make a very simple game like rock, scissors, and papers, you will see how difficult it is to come up with a safe and provably safe and fair and whatever you want solution. But let me skip. So this is somehow kind of the future in the sense that it's a proposal. There is a long story. If you want to know, we can talk about this. They made one of the most successful ICO, about worth now $500 million, more or less. And the idea is that you embed in the rules the control, the governance is embedded in the rules. So there are rules to change the rules. The consensus also allows you to change the rules about the consensus. So people may decide that we don't use anymore the proof of work because it's too expensive in this specific moment. There is a procedure to let consensus about, I don't know, deciding to use the proof of stake emerge through the mining process. this is quite interesting, is under development. This is the white paper. And it's not clear which kind of meta model we may want to use this, of an adaptive system that, of course, has some input about the external situation and evolves. It's quite interesting and complex. It is illuminating this exchange, July 2017. Vitalik Buterin is the father of Ethereum, as you know, and he said, I don't think, basically, that everything can be decided internally, mechanicistically, by the programs that are running on the blockchain. So he personally disagrees with this direction. And this is the answer, same day, by Tesus, Arthur Breitman, basically, that they say, we don't want to eliminate completely the possibility of extra protocol governance. Extra protocol governance means that, for instance, the community decide for an hard fork, like in the DAO solution of the attack. So we rewrite, everybody decides to rewrite the history. So if you want to know more, I'm concluding by inviting you to the workshop on trusted smart contract at Financial Cryptography this year. So last year we had Vitalik talking about crypto economics, and this year we will have Breitman talking about this model. So if you are interested. And I want to leave you with this, which I think, how many of you knows about this? This is a coin of the Yap Island, which is in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific Ocean. And there is the history is on Wikipedia. About 300 years ago, they were using these coins because they were lacking a lot. They're still in place. But they, of course, have a problem. They are very difficult to be moved. So you don't pay people by giving coin, but simply everybody knows who every coin belongs to. So this is a kind of distributed ledger. And when you pay, you simply tell everybody, this is not mine anymore, belongs to, even if it stays, of course, in front of your garden, because you can't move it. Okay? And if you try to steal, the community will say, no, we know that this belongs to, and it's an oral tradition, but the story is quite nice, if you can search for it.